thanks very much to all you for coming to this meeting this afternoon, and thank you also the Southwark Leaseholder Group, in particular Brendan, Mo, Liz and Ina for organising this event. I'm incredibly pleased to be here this afternoon to talk at this event, which I want to quickly add isn't the usual kind of schmoozing that a speaker gives. I'm delighted to see such a large number of local authority leaseholders gathered together in one place, because it doesn't happen very often. I'm absolutely sure it isn't encouraged to happen, and I'm very sorry to discover from Michael Scorer this morning of Southwark Council that this is going to be the last meeting of, well, the last funded of our Borough Council leaseholders. And I think that is a great shame, and I hope that local authority leaseholders form their own group. We have a number of groups around now formed for cladding, and I think that the issues of leasehold in local authorities are so specific to you that you should actually unite and form your own group and make sure it's addressed. So I'm pleased to be here. I set up the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership, which I run with Martin Boyd in January 2012, and after I've been a national newspaper journalist for 30 years. And the reason I did so was because I think this sector is about the murkiest, as murky as it gets in residential property. You're only a part of it, and most of it is relatively benign, I'm afraid. You probably won't believe that, but I'm afraid it is. It's a multi-billion-pound business, highly monetised by very important and powerful commercial interests, most of whom hide offshore behind nominee directors, hide their beneficial ownership, investment vehicles in people's homes, and monetise this quite ruthlessly with all the unfair, unbalanced leasehold laws that we have not reformed or indeed done away with. I want to say, and this is going to sound terribly boasted, but it's true, so I'm going to. Every single initiative to reform leasehold that you are aware of, that you've either seen on the telly or read in the newspapers, is a direct reaction to our activities. We're the Secretariat of the All-Party Parliamentary Group. We have 160 MPs in our group. We will grow that. I know Harry Scoffin, who works with us, is working away to get more and more MPs on board to ensure that we have a real voice in this Parliament, and that we make sure that the government starts delivering on some of the much promised and still waiting for reforms. Now, one of the strengths of LKP is the fact that I'm a sort of trained journalist and an editor, so I can write about this stuff with testing faith here, but without falling into the kind of traps that our learned friends love to set when they suck up to the money. And because of it, we've managed to really name names and get this sector highly scrutinised. So outfits like Long Harbour, Will Astor, Vincent Chengitz, Israel Moskowitz, Joseph Durbitz, Benjamin Meyer, these sorts of characters you really don't want to encounter and don't want to have in your lives are quite well known. Now, I want to get specifically onto what's local authority leasehold, because we've heard quite a lot about leasehold reform, and most of it doesn't actually affect you, sadly. But just about every week I'm contacted by 3 or 4 leaseholders whose flats are in local authority buildings. Most, but by no means all, based in London, and a fair few are from here in Southwark. Indeed, I recognise some of you here in this meeting. And it's almost always the same thing. Out of the blue, the council has got in touch, issuing a Section 20 for major works, repairing the building, replacing the windows, installing a district boiler, and families whose incomes just about cover their outgoings with a sort of wing and a prayer suddenly find themselves facing staggering bills of £10,000, £15,000, £20,000. There's Farida Chandu, who's she's here, so she had a bill for £44,000, and we have figures of that sort that do come, and it escalates very badly if leaseholders do not understand the leasehold knowledge partnership's absolutely cardinal rule. If there's one thing you learn from this meeting today, just bear this in mind. The property tribunal is an unfair tribunal. Its cost regime is weighted against you because you are only tenants. So your landlord will get legal costs if you withhold money, worth still ground rent, and your bill of, say, £10,000 might escalate aggressively. I'll give you an example of that. There was a woman in Onslow Square in Kensington, very nice flat, 800,000 quid, wonderful, one of those white stucco building, and the freeholders, the Welcome Trust. That's the second biggest charity in the world that does absolutely magnificent work. It's also an extremely aggressive landlord. She withheld £6,000 in service charges, and the Welcome Trust spent £140,000 on solicitors and barristers to splatter her across a court over 4 days and dump that legal cost on her. Now, the only reason she didn't lose her home was because we intervened. I got the Guardian involved and the BBC, and very disobliging questions were asked of the Ethical Welcome Trust of how on earth they were running this estate in Kensington, and why were they spending such a disproportionate amount of money over a relatively small bill. Only in leasehold does that sort of expenditure make any kind of sense. And every single person in that courtroom, when she went in, would have known this is the mug who's going to end up paying for it. So, please, you pay first, you fight second. You do not fall for this elephant trap of getting caught up in leasehold's vicious legal cost regime. And I wouldn't pay too much attention to what lawyers say on this, incidentally. They get their fees off you, but you'll be picking up the huge bills of the other side if you fail. Now, obviously these major work schemes wipe out many leaseholders who get them, and I'm confidently assured by a confidential source in Southwark Council that there's one desk in the borough in the borough offices which deals with right to buy, and another desk which deals with buying back in former council flats because people can't afford to pay these bills. So, what do I advise? Well, the advice is rather formulaic, I'm afraid, but it's basically this. Form groups with other leaseholders. You don't have anything in common with the tenants on this, they're not going to pick up the bill. Form groups with tenants to share, so with leaseholders to share costs. Fire off a solicitor's council to tell them, fire off a solicitor's letter to the council to tell them they're not to be messed about with, and that they're not going to be able to just dump 20,000 quid bills on you without you challenging them and subjecting them to some degree of professional scrutiny. You can scrutinise the way that the Section 20 has been served, whether it was correctly served, and you can dispute with a professional witness, usually a chartered surveyor, the actual quantum of cost. But this is not an issue that really you should be dealing with yourself, which is why you do need others in order to pool resources. Involve local councillors and MPs and keep the process as scrutinised as possible. Get as many third-party people involved as possible. Get in touch with us. And remove all emotion from the process when you deal with the council. You've got to give an indication to the council that you are absolutely forensic about this and professional, that you are going to employ people who understand the law, and you are only going to pay what is right and proper and not a penny more. You will avoid words like fraud, crooks, cheats. You can use all those between yourselves, but you don't use them in correspondence. Now, many times I'm contacted by young professionals in council blocks who buy the local authority flats here in London because they're the only ones they can afford. Now, the good news is that they bought a flat that was to a considerable degree cheaper than one in a private block, but the bad news is that the landlord is a local council with other housing priorities. Their job is to house the unhoused, primarily, to the private leaseholders, and they also have an abysmal record on controlling costs. It was very interesting to hear Michael Score talking about how Mears is being dumped by Southwark. I was delighted to hear it. It's taking this process in-house that hopefully will involve some improvement. I have to say, when I last looked into local authority tendering, I was absolutely shocked by the amount of local newspaper reports and court reports involving council corruption. And I do want to single out the head of housing at Exeter, who I think is still behind bars. He got 3 years, but he might just be out by now. But anyway, I was quite surprised at the amount of council corruption in there. Now, that is irrelevant to your disputes, to be frank, and you can have a good read on the LKP website if you like about it, but it's not a rabbit hole to go down, and it's certainly not something to assert in any correspondence to the councils, but it was something that shook me a little bit, because I wasn't really expecting it. Now, for a lucky few, there might have been escape from the bill of major works process. That is, if you've only just bought. If the conveyancing solicitor did find out that the major works were planned, or the council didn't say that the major works was pending, then there might be a workout there. I did do an interview with BBC, You and Yours programme a few years ago, about a couple here in Southwark, a young couple, who escaped a £23,000 bill because of this get-out. Their solicitor had not made the inquiries that he should, and they sued the solicitor for professional negligence. But for others, there's no alternative except to make a challenge and hope that the council's bill can be shaved a bit, or at least that the council's enthusiasm to creep up the costs can be curbed. I think we've touched on it today. One of the problems with councils, and councils do have other priorities than private leaseholders, is that these blocks don't have any contingency funds. So these huge bills do just come out of the blue and are dumped on your doorstep. Under the coalition government, the then Secretary of State, Eric Pickles, came up with a law to cap major costs to £10,000 outside London and £15,000 within it. This is called Florey's Law, and it's given rather false hope to a number of local authority leaseholders, because you think that these caps will apply, but they only apply if central government funds is involved. And I have not come across one single case where Florey's Law was actually applied. So it's quite easy to get that. I think you can assume that these bills that are coming in the next 10 years, there will be considerable efforts to work around that as well. So a word of caution on that. I think that's really probably about it, I'm afraid, so far as your resources are concerned. You must tell the council that you're serious. If necessary, you must go to court. This isn't something that you do yourself, and you do not do it. Once again, I repeat this, you do not do this after on withholding payment. You must pay that. If you don't, it can be catastrophic. I mentioned the lady the woman who withheld £44,000. She disputed this, it went to appeal, she took it to appeal, she repeated exactly the same arguments in person that had failed the first time round. She now has a debt, age 63, of £110,000. So this is just not a game. This is major scale litigation, and you need professional help doing it. I want to just touch on the reforms that are coming through, but in all truth, they're of very limited use to you. I mean, we've had the Law Commission look at enfranchisement, you can't enfranchise. The second is right to manage, when you can't do right to manage. The third is common hold. I'm not even sure whether common hold would make that much of a difference. Martin might have a different view on this, but I'm not sure it would make that much of a difference for you in local authority leasehold. Often you're in a block as a minority, there might just be 5 leaseholders in a block of 50, say. I mean, the power of the council is overwhelming. So in these blocks, and they will make the decisions on making it comply with carbon emissions regulations and so forth. They have. So all you can do is resist to some small degree these major works bills that you get, and make sure that you're not paying any more than you should, and to try to ensure that the quality of the workmanship is good. It was good that the Competition and Markets Authority investigated the mis-selling scandal in the mainly Dublin ground rent scandal, mainly applied to houses and some flats. But again, this is not really going to doesn't have much relevance to you because the ground rents are small. But there's one reform that I think will make a big difference if it were ever enacted. And it's not going to seem very obvious, but I just think that, you know, Sajid Javid in December 2000, when he was community secretary, said that he would ban leasehold houses, well, they've largely dried up anyway, and set new ground rents to 0. This isn't terribly important, you would think, because your ground rents are, what, £10, something like that. But in fact, if new ground rents are set to 0, this whole leasehold game stops. It is the one legitimate income that a freeholder can get out of a block of flats, and it's taken away. The effect of setting new ground rents to 0 would ripple through the sector. It would have an effect on the terracotta army of professionals who work in this sector as well. The whole compass would be reset, and that would have a benefit for you as well. It won't be an obvious one, however, because your ground rents are not that significant. You're not being systematically ripped off by a commercial freeholder. You're being rolled over really by a complacent and not terribly efficient bureaucracy. You don't have quite the same problems as, say, a leaseholder in Martin Payne's portfolio. One got in touch earlier this week. She's facing ground rents of £6,000 a year. Now, that's obviously, it wasn't spotted by the conveyancing solicitor, but it shows the kind of games that can happen with this form of tenure. You're not in that position, but you should organise collectively and unite with organisations like this one, that Brendan and the others have set up, and make sure you fight this collectively, because the only power you have of leaseholders is collective. Thank you.